Indigenous arts as decolonizing forces. Art is a form of colonial resistance, Indigenous resurgence and aesthetic. Against colonial erasure, art is a space of returning and enduring, in recentering on land, collectivity, and place as the transformative foundation for decolonization. An embracing of the wild dissonance cacophony to the point where colonial common sense no longer makes sense. Rainbow Serpent is a collective effort where an established artist used his name to lend authority to the piece. Ironically, I could not find a chaotic way to introduce ideas here. There were only regular, linear options available on PowerPoint. Indigenous art escapes the boundaries of colonial ideas of space and time through a radical relationality to the land, including urban spaces where indigeneity has been erased. Sunny Asu generously allows people to use his images, undermining the modern ideas of intellectual property. This is also expressed in connection to the ancestors in a restructuring of colonial ideas of time. Diverse identities can coexist in his art, like here in his conversation with the art of Emily Carr. Creation exists as ceremony, and the creation of decolonial art is in the spirit of generosity and collective imaginings of possible ways forward. It is a spark that shines its way forward in a burst of light. Storytelling is an integral part of our connection to our homelands, and is also a critical part of both how our history is passed down and our attitude about it. The authors here know that the talk of our colonial past is part of our humor, discourse, poetry, music, and storytelling, and restorying is reframing colonialism to become free from the pain of it and to become a decolonizing generative process. The Nuchamas have a word for it, hahupa. These are teaching stories. They are lived values for Indigenous governance and renewal for future generations. Hahupa creates links to homeland and family responsibilities. This leads to community-driven generative actions, new ceremonies to be created to counteract internalized colonialism through yaukmis, love. In this way, hope and possibility for the future is grounded in our own worldview. The authors used a methodology called Kuasa Family Way to find the relational accountability and truth-telling, providing opportunities for residential school survivors to restore their dignity by speaking their truth in their own voices, and looking for generative processes in line with traditional teachings such as Haupa. Listen to Dr. Simon Lucas tell a small part of this tale, and how telling this story became a generative action.
Thing that we done, I never forget this meeting. We sat down and we said, why do our kids have to go to a residential school? We're going to shut the school down.
Joanne Archibald underlines the importance of endurance through the generations using oral traditions in her book on storytelling. She's lost her language and notes that the stories change their humor and loses some meaning in English, but the main principles remain. Stories pass down protocol, morals, and listening skills, and traditional knowledge in the oral tradition. The oral tradition starts with grandparents teaching their grandchildren respect, humility, and moral lessons, intuitively curated according to need and age, and children learn the traditions, protocols, and how to listen with 3 ears, 2 on the head and 1 in the heart. Some children learn to speak as well, learn the stories, and eventually take their place as storytellers after a long apprenticeship in using humor, humility, and their gift of telling stories. This intergenerational teaching is renewed among the Solo people, and the elders have made it their mission to continue in the oral tradition into future generations. My family tells stories in the kitchen where we create together and eat together. My great-grandfather and my grandmother shared this with my father when they taught him to cook. in generations that came before that as well. Here is a story created by my son and I and told in bread. It is a new story that was made from what I have learned in these articles and from my teacher.
Once there was time. It eventually took the form of a snake eating its tail. Once it's got its tail, it could not let go no matter how it changed its shape or grew or twisted. It was chaotic, but returned always to where it came from. One day the earth formed, and it was encompassed by time. Then people arrived. They tried to escape time, but they were devoured by it. But from within, the people tried to change the shape of the world and our ideas of time. They tried to make time neat and orderly. They changed the landscape and thought they had won. But though it temporarily changed shape and was shaped by the ideas of the people, it eventually resumed the shape of a snake eating its tail and returned to where it came from.
Creation is a political act that defies the neat and orderly boundaries created by colonial ideas. The creation of art, the remembering of a story, or the creating of a moral tale is a healing, generative process. Through creation, we can remember our shared wealth. Kwiat Apult put it best. The wealth of a person and the wealth of a community is family, is the culture, is the traditional teachings. It is all the wonders of art that comes from an artist who has great teachings and knowledge of practice of what Mother Nature has given us.